All right, Coach. Let's go back to your sophomore season at Miami, and I guess it's after a game with Bowling Green and Jerry Pearson. You have a long talk, and somewhere in that conversation, coaching comes up. What do you remember about that conversation?
Yeah, it's funny because when you're in college and you're trying to figure things out, and it was crazy because I had just seen a game. And I think it was Charlie Coles was the head coach at the time in Central Michigan. And I thought, man, I would love to be able to do that. And what made it even closer to home was that Charlie Coles was an alumnus of Miami. He played with Jerry Pearson. And it's funny, when in the 80s, when I was growing up, you either thought about being an NBA player or a rapper or something of that nature, and never thought that one day that, hey, I could be a college basketball coach. And I just asked coach about it and how do you get into business? And next thing you know, man, that's I'm full go into it, and I'll never forget that conversation.
To coaching, I mean, you were a really good player. You were on a really good team. Obviously, I'm assuming you want to play till the wheels fall off at some point. But was the coaching thing at any point before that? Did that kind of sit in your mind that this is something?
Not
maybe
necessarily. The more I started to think about it, and it made me a better player because I started even to think about the game differently, And so I'll be honest with you. Once I got into it, it's something I knew I really wanted to do, and I had an opportunity to go play overseas right after college. But then I had a great opportunity at Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and I remember having a conversation with Coach Pearson. He said, "If you love this business, it's hard to get into it. If you get a foot in, jump in." And I never looked back since, and decided not to do anything and play overseas professionally, and never really not thought about, man, I wonder if I had gone that route. So I've been doing this, man, really ever since college. I left right out, and I've been coaching ever since.
Charlie Coles and John Thompson, you said were really your role models early on. What was it about them and their sort of their place in the game that was so appealing to you?
Well, John was more his demeanor on the sideline, how he controlled things with his demeanor, how disciplined his kids were in that regards. And then Charlie was more something that I felt like I was closer to. He's from Springfield, Ohio. I'm from Dayton, Ohio. He played in Miami, Ohio. So did I. And so I related a lot. Man, I could do exactly his role, what he did. And I remember when I met him as a freshman, he and Jerry Pearson were teammates, and they were talking about that. I thought, man, I would love to do that. Maybe it may be a day Ron Harper and he's playing and I'm coaching, even back then. And then it ended up being fruition. That's how it turned out. So two different type of ways, but one I can grasp one and see, and the other one was kind of that icon figure. And then when we were in the NCAA tournament as my junior year, we were in the NCAA tournament, and so was Georgetown, and we were both in Washington State, Pullman, Washington, and we were in the same region. And to be able to see him, that was the first time I saw him more in person, and I was still playing at the time. Even further to say, hey, I wanted to be able to do that.
I grew up in Toledo, and actually Charlie was in his couple of years of being a high school coach there, and so I got to play against him during that time. What I remember about him was just his. And obviously a little more of a national scale when he got to Miami a second time, and then as the head coach, that he was just a personality force of nature. John Thompson may have been this mountain of a man, but Charlie Coles was just this incredible, had this incredible charisma. How much of that sort of was wired into you a little bit? Obviously you have your own personality and so on, but to see him be able to be that way, did that kind of allow you to come out of your shell, if there ever was a shell for you?
What I knew about Charlie that I used to love is that when you were around, he was infectious. And I thought, man, it was his personality. There was no fakeness to it. That was his personality. If you saw him and you were having lunch with him in Oxford, Ohio, or you saw him in a game, I mean, it was his personality. And I remember him telling me that. And I always thought, man, is that if I'm going to do this, I want to do it the only way I know how, and that's to be me. And that's how Charlie was. And so he enjoyed coaching. He enjoyed life, but he enjoyed coaching also. And I didn't think it was anything phony about it. And I loved that. I used to absolutely love that. And his quirks in regards to things he would say at awkward times, and people thought it was funny. That was just who he was. And And I learned something from that. And so I didn't want to be Charlie Coles. I didn't want to be John Thompson, but I respected the fact that they were their own men and that they carry that into coaching.
1987, you hook up with Milwaukee as an assistant there. Who'd you know? Who helped you get in the door there at that point?
Well, Jerry Pearson, because we had just played my senior year. We had just played Iowa State in the NCAA tournament in Minneapolis, and they had a guy named John Hornacek, and we lost on the last second shot. And I remember being devastated knowing that was my last college game. And we went back to the hotel, and we were playing. Iowa State was coached by Johnny Orr. And Johnny Orr and his staff was tight with Jerry Pearson because the assistant they played on the same team at Miami. And the assistant, Steve Antrim, got the job a year later at Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And they just happened to call because we had played in the NCAA tournament a year before. And there we go. And I started my career at Wisconsin-Milwaukee, just like that, from a NCAA tournament game and meeting those guys, so almost beating them in the NCAA tournament, to now I'm working with Steve Antrim and my career. But again, it goes back to Jerry Pearson and the people at Miami, Ohio. And that's what's great about Miami, the whole Credo coaches deal. And, we started with football and then with basketball. And Randy Ayers is another guy that I looked up to, and another Springfield, Ohio guy, coached at Ohio State. I remember he used to wear black suits all the time. And I remember as a player just watching him coach when he was at Ohio State, said, "Oh, that's really cool how he dresses. He's always he would roll up his program." And again, you just take little things like that as a player. And he's like, man, maybe one day that's going to be me. And I still got great relationship with guys like Randy and those guys that I call every once in a while and say, "Hey, what do you think?" And Randy's had a great career, but it's those type of guys that have really was my foundation. And then, of course, when I got the job at Wisconsin-Milwaukee, I would always call those guys. I would always use my Miami, Ohio references whenever I got in trouble.
So, I mean, you're diving in. At that point, though, Milwaukee's still an NAIA school, I believe. Mm-hmm. So it's like rules are a little different than just being a D1. So, and I'm sure it's just you're the Swiss Army knife. You're doing a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. How did you take to the job? Did you like it?
I loved it, but I had no idea what I was doing. Man, I faked it for the longest. I had no idea. I was treated like I was still a player. And so, the players are really the same age I was for the most part. I just got married. I was about to have a child. And so, man, everything. It was life. It was coaching. I went from being a scholarship athlete, being spoiled and entitled, to all of a sudden paying bills and having a child and really working and trying to make it into business. So I had to grow up fast. But, it's funny because I look at it now. I became a head coach when I was 31 years old, and I realized I had no idea what I was doing back then. You think you do, but when I look back, especially my first year being an assistant, I only been assistant out of only 6 years. The rest of it, I'd been a head coach my whole career. So, but it's funny when I look back at it now, I was like, I had no idea what I was doing.
What was the hardest part for you?
Trying to translate what I knew as a player to a coach. So I was so active because I always felt like I wanted to do it. I was better for me to go on the court and just do it, but I couldn't because I'm sitting in a seat. And I never sat in a seat before. And so to be able to translate it was the hardest part for me. Even getting ready for games was different because I prepare as a player one way versus trying to prepare players to play. And so I remember that first year was so awkward. Not putting the jersey on and those things. And that was probably the only time, where I still thought, man, I could still play. I was young enough. And I was watching my college roommate and best friend play every day with the Cavaliers. And he was having a great NBA career. And I'm watching his play and kind of going back. So there were a lot of mixed emotions about that first year for me.
Milwaukee was making the transition, NAIA to Division II, ultimately to Division I. And in the middle of you just trying to find your own way through it, things are changing sort of around you. How did you handle all of those transitions in those 6 years?
Steve Antrim was a guy that I worked for, and he allowed me to do so much. We didn't have a lot of assistants, only 2 assistant coaches. And so I just did a little bit of everything. And I just tried to learn the business as much as I could, whether it was through recruiting or whatever. And just, I went from a player GA right into a full-time assistant. So, and we were trying to make the change. And then what I mean, and we actually we did a great job of making that change from NAI Division II to Division I. But again, when you don't know a lot, what the easiest thing to do is put your head down and work. and that's what I did. But more importantly than that, I enjoyed it. Man, I have not had one bad day on the job since I've come from college. I enjoyed it. I loved it. I never thought of it, there were losses and those things, but there's never a day I woke up and said, man, I wish I was doing something different.
6 years there, and then you head back to Miami, this time as an assistant under Herb Sendek. Was it just time? After enough time that it was like, I feel like I need to make a move? What sort of prompted the move there?
Only one thing, going back to my alma mater. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought one day I would be the head coach of Miami. Wow, I really did. And that was kind of a dream of mine to be able to do that. And I thought, well, if I can go back as an assistant, that could turn, I could possibly want to do that. But I really wanted at that time, I thought maybe one day I'd be the head coach of Miami. That was the number one reason for taking that job. And then learning something different as I continued to grow. I was only with her for 1 year, but I learned a lot about coaching from her how to prepare for certain things. But that 1 year with her, I've learned a lot of different things.
Like what? Like what's the big takeaway there?
Well, honestly, I thought Herb was really, he was meticulous about everything. And so I learned a little bit about that. And Herb wasn't sometimes, and he'll tell you this, he was the easiest guy in the world to work for. And so sometimes you learn things on the opposite end also in that regard. But in regards to planning, that's what I really learned from him. And so I thought, man, if you want to be a head coach, I just kind of watch him meticulously how he went about staff and handling different things offensively and defensively and some of those things. And at that time, I was working with a guy named Sean Miller. We were on the same staff at that particular time. And really just we had a great, and then we brought in Thad Matta. And so that staff was pretty good at Miami, Ohio at that particular time. And so I learned a lot of basketball in the 13 months I was there.
That was my freshman year at Ohio University, that 1994 season. And you guys came into the Convocation Center, Devin Davis, Landon Hackham, and kicked our tails all over. We got you in the championship game, though, in the MAC. So
I know you did. You came back and got us.
Does that hurt you a little bit still today? I need to know. A little bit?
No, you know what? It hurt me more when I lost OU as a player than it is a coach.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Yeah. As a coach, you were mad, but I really felt it as a player because, that was a big rival then. And
yes, sir.
And there was one team I didn't want to lose to was Ohio University. So, and I had friends that played for it. So I took losses to, and I didn't have many losses in college, but if that loss, I had that one loss as a player to OU, those stuck out probably more than anything.
That makes me feel good just a little bit tonight in my green heart. How did you take your personality? Everybody know. I mean, you radiate positivity and obviously don't have any problem talking to anybody. How did you take to the recruiting part of the job?
You know what? It was interesting because I recruited like I wanted to be recruited. So even today, I always think, I haven't played in a long time, but I always think about myself as a player. How would I like that? And then nowadays, it's kind of weird. I think of it as a parent. How would I want to recruit my son? How would I want someone to recruit my child? How did I want to be treated as a player? And I always thought, first of all, we wanted to make it fun. I love Miami, but those 3 or 4 hour practices we used to have drove me crazy. And that's the first thing I said, I'll never practice that long. I don't think there was any reason to ever practice 3 hours a day. And that was the old school way with Hendrick and those guys. You get in the gym at 1 o'clock and you wouldn't leave at 5 or 6. Now kids will quit and transfer on you if you try that. So just to be able to enjoy it and have fun. But I always thought of it as a player. But then, like I said, when I had my son, I thought of it as, now as a parent, how would I want someone to treat my child? And so how would I want someone to recruit my child? So those are the 2 ways that I really, really looked into coaching a lot of things is as a player and then as a dad.
30 years old, 1 year at Miami, 1994, and you're the head coach at IUPUI. They were still Division II at that point, but how? Why? You're so young in the game and still at that point? Was it just young and dumb as much as anything that you thought you could take on that kind of a deal at that level of experience in your career?
Well, yes, and yes to all of those things. It's funny because I thought the IUPUI situation was made for me because I just did that. We had just done that at Wisconsin-Milwaukee.
Right.
And we had a lot of fun kind of trying to build a program. And I had never even heard of IUPUI. I'm at Miami, Ohio, my alma mater, and I get a phone call and someone asked me about it. And my first reaction is, "Where's the school?" Had no idea. It was just an hour and a half down the way. I just never heard of it. And so I remember driving to there the first time and went on campus. Thought the campus was beautiful. And driving back, going back to Miami, I thought, no, I'm not going to do this. There's no way. It's not division. I know how much work you have to put in to be able to do that. And they had less money at IUPUI than we did at Wisconsin, Milwaukee at that particular time. And then I slept, talked it over. The next day, I thought, yeah, I think I want to do this. And I didn't tell Herb, I didn't tell anyone, because at that time I wanted to be 100% sure. Right. And just decided to do it, and it took off. And every single person around me said, "Do not take the job." All of my people that I look up to told me, "Do not take that job." And I'm one of those guys also that even when I was being recruited, people said, "Don't go to Miami, Ohio." And you know, that's a whole other story. But if you tell me not to do something, I'm probably going to end up doing it and say I can try to make it work. And went over, made it work, and yeah, it was absolutely. I had no idea that I would be there 17 years as a head coach. That's probably the more remarkable part than anything, because generally with teams, when you start Division I, you get a coach, they bring it up, and then they fire him, and then somebody else takes over.
Right.
But I had great years there, and loved the city. Have raised 2 kids there, and so it turned out to be the perfect situation for me.
Was Herb Sendek one of those people that said, "Don't take this job"?
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
he did. And honestly, if I'm in her spot, I'm probably saying the same thing.
Yeah.
My dad told me not to take the job. My mom told me not to take the job. Jerry Pearson told me not to take the job. And so, kept looking, and I thought, I can do this. I can do this. I know why they're telling me not to take it, but I can do it, and we were able to get it done.
It was sort of laid out, as I read, UT at the job in 94, that it's like, this is sort of a 6-year plan that we're going to go D1 in 2000. And I guess everything I read, there seemed to be a lot of ownership on you in terms of, I've got to do this to get us ready. I've got to do that. It was more almost like you were shouldering that burden as opposed to a we situation. How did you worry about 2000? Or was it just, I'm worried about 1994 and just like, I'm just coaching this team. How did that process go, and knowing that there's this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and to your point, you're not even sure you're going to be there to see it?
I never thought about that. I knew it was going to be 2000, but honestly, when I took the job, I took it as being a Division I head coach. And every single day, I just thought I was a Division I head coach, and we were playing a 9-1 schedule for until we got ready. So I treated it as a Division I job. I would treat it just like if I was at Miami and Wisconsin, Milwaukee. If you treated it any other way, you're going to fail at that particular place. Only reason I say that is because when you look around you, man, when I coached there, Bob Knight was at Indiana. When I coached there, Gene Cady was at Purdue. There were legends that were around me. Butler was having a lot of success, and so Reggie Miller was the king of Indianapolis for the Pacers. And so basketball was huge. It was like the mecca of basketball. And you got right downtown, you got this school that no one's even heard of. And you've got to kind of say, how do you make your way with it? And I didn't think making our way at that particular time was us talking about what's going to happen in 2000. So I always just talked about it as being Division I from the very first time that I walked on that campus. And so when I recruited everyone saying, we're going to be a Division I basketball program. And really, if I had done it any other way, it probably wouldn't have worked, to be honest with you.
What was the biggest piece of advice Steve Antrim gave you from the transition at Milwaukee that you were able to try to apply there?
Steve was great at that. When he recruited me to come there to be an assistant coach, he said, we're a Division I program. And I learned that from day one. So we weren't worried about the NAIA Division II. We didn't worry about it. We knew what the goal was going. So we just said we're Division I, and we took that same concept at that particular time. Steve really prepared me for IUPUI. Now, again, I'm 30 years old. I have no idea what I'm doing as a head coach, but I took every single step that we did at Milwaukee. I took the exact same blueprint, and we took it to from how we practiced everything. I took it right to IUPUI.
In those early years as a head coach, 30, 31, 32, I mean, who are your mentors at that point? Are you leading on that Miami group, wherever they may be, just to try to, because you had to have had questions, but stuff that came up that you couldn't even have imagined going in?
Yeah, a little bit, but not as much as you think. I thought that I'm in a position. Why not just try it? And so, like, for example, when I talked about Gene Katie on one side and Bob Knight on the other side, I remember thinking, there's no way that I'm going to take this program, be a motion team like everybody in the whole state's doing and everybody in the Big Ten's doing, play man-to-man defense and think I'm going to succeed here doing that. That's how I came up with the matchup. I've coached since every time I've been a head coach. That's been our calling cards, our matchup, because I felt like we had to do something different. The other part of it, as a player, I go back to my playing day. I was awful as a man-to-man defender, but when we played our matchup, I was great at it. So I had fun playing a matchup as a player. And so I took that same deal and said, okay, this is what I want to do. And then I started watching people that were doing it. And I remember I watched a game on television, and there was a guy playing in a small gym. I was in a small gym in IUPUI. He coached at Division II level. It was John Chaney. And John Chaney was in the small gym coaching these kids at Temple, and he was playing his matchup. They were practicing early in the morning. And I thought, there it is. And I would go to the Final Four in clinics, and I just followed him around. He had no idea I was following him. I would just follow him. It was like I was undercover. I would watch every single thing he would do. If he was at a clinic, I try to go to the clinic. I would listen to everything until probably about 5 years before he passed away. I had a nerve to actually introduce myself to him. And at that time, it was actually later than that. I was a head coach at Georgia State. And I remember meeting him, and I told him this story. He was retired at that particular time, but I literally followed every single thing that man did. I knew nothing about Temple. I had no idea it was in Philly. I didn't care. My whole thing was that was my niche, that I think that I could do what he was doing because of his background. Wow, coach of Division II, terrible gym they're playing in, and man, he's playing UMass. He's beating all these teams, and I'm thinking, that's what I want. And that started to excite me. And that's how I started to build what I was going to end up doing.
2003, you guys make the NCAA tournament. Just in terms of validating the journey, I suppose, how magical of a run was that for you? And a moment for you personally, just knowing where you had started, almost 10 years earlier, trying to get this program up to this level. And then again, just validating everybody's belief in you that you could get it done.
I say I've had a lot of great moments with coaching my son in the NCAA tournament, winning games in the NCAA tournament. Probably the best moment of my coaching career is when we beat Valparaiso to get to the NCAA tournament. Valpo was a standard in the state of Indiana at that particular time, coming off Sweet 16s and some of the things they had done. I talked to you about everyone telling me not to take this job. After we won that game, it wasn't so much a validation to say, I told you we can get this done. It was more of a validation to myself, honestly, that I belong in this business. That's the first time that I thought, man, I really, truly belong in this business. And so from that point on, my whole attitude about myself being in this business changed. And so and I think that's a big deal for a lot of coaches. They may not bring that up, but sometimes you can lie to yourself. But I thought that was the first time that I said, I truly, truly belong in this business.
I want to talk to you about Samaritan's Feet and this organization that you started collaborating with in 2008. I guess just firstly, how does that sort of come into your orbit and become such an important part of sort of your personal mission as not only a coach but just a great human being?
Well, I think most people know my faith, that I'm Christian, and I don't hide that at all. I don't push that on anyone, but if people know how I feel about that. But at that particular time, when I was talking about the NCAA tournament, a lot of those things that I'm trying to build the program and build myself, I still didn't feel like I had a purpose. And what's really is my purpose in life coaching. I could never figure that out. And it was taking me, I'm reading these books. I'm trying to figure out about myself, where I'm at and those things, and being a father and a husband and trying to coach in this business. And I get a call on a late Sunday night from a man I never met in my life before. And he got a number from a friend who, Tony Dungy, was the football coach for the Colts. Tony also went to the same church as I went to. And this guy worked for the Colts. And he said, hey, I'm starting this weird. I met a guy, Manny and homie, and I'm working on this deal about we're trying to really try to get this whole deal about awareness of children not wearing shoes. And so Tony gave him my number. the guy calls me. Actually, I thought it was a joke, to be honest with you. And we started talking, and he says, "Hey, we're really looking for a coach to kind of help us." And so my first reaction was what I told him. I said, "Listen, you know what I think would be great? If you can get Bob Knight or you get Gene Katie to do this, I think it'd be great for you guys, because then, especially in the mecca of basketball, you could really bring awareness to this." And so the guy Manny got really quiet, and he said, "Sounds like a great idea. Can I fly in to see you tomorrow?" So I said, "Sure." Had a day off. He flies in, and I'm thinking I'm getting ready to sell him. I was going to tell him I don't really know Coach Knight and Coach Katie that well, but I'll call him for you. He comes in, he sits in my office. We talk about it. I said, "Man, I think it's a great thing. But here's a guy that I think can get a hold of Coach Knight." And he looked at me and says, "No, Coach, we want you to do it." Again, I'm thinking, man, I'm young. I don't know if this is, I've never seen another coach do this. So I call the 5 or 6 people that I really trust and say, "Hey, listen, what do you think about this?" They wanted me to coach barefoot in the game, blah, blah. "Hey, Ron, I think it's a great idea, but I don't think you should do that. I don't think, you work at conservative institutions with colleges, you may want another job one day. I don't know if this suits well for you, blah, blah, blah." So again, it's almost like the whole thing coming back again, everyone telling me not to do it. Well, I decided to do it, and it's been the best thing in my life. When I'm done coaching, I will work full time for Samaritan's Feet. It gave me a purpose in life. It changed my life. It made me a better father, made me a better husband, made me a better coach. I needed that at that particular. I always thought it was about helping kids and those things, but those kids and helping them, it helped me tremendously in becoming a person that I thought I wanted to be. So it changed a lot about me. It changed me as a coach in that regards, and so. That's just been a big part of, God puts things in your life at certain times when you need it. And I needed that at that particular time.
I don't need names, but were there jobs you didn't get because of this, because of your insistence on this program, on this Samaritan's Feet program being part of what you were going to be doing?
No question. No question. It's funny, the interviews that I would have, that's the first question that would come up. And when that came up, I always knew that, there was a university, and I probably would have gotten a job. But I'd say, even whether it's Georgia State or whether it's here, I'd lead off by telling people that you're bringing this to your program.
Right.
That's why even at Tulane, I think it's even more interesting, because Tulane has a Jewish background. When you look at the students and some of those things, and how they have kind of embraced that. But yes, there were schools that did not want to. They didn't want to have both of those things come together, me and Samaritan's Feet.
As a head coach of a program, and the platform that you have, I know the answer, but I want you to answer it. How important is it for you, whether it's Samaritan's Feet, whether it's anything, to use that platform for just human betterment, if you can, and maybe not just be, I'm a basketball coach and that's all I'm here to do.
Well, and that's what I meant by the purpose. If there's anybody in a position that, if you're coaching at the NFL or the college football, college basketball, and you have a platform and it's only about winning, you fail, period. I don't care who you are. I don't care how much money you've made. I don't care how many national titles. I don't care if you got to every Final Four. If you had this platform and it did not better someone else, and you didn't take on another cause outside of yourself, then you failed as a person. And that's what I meant back then. And I'm doing a lot of things, I'm enjoying it, but I don't feel like I'm winning in life. And winning in life has nothing to do with how many Final Fours you go to, or looking at your bank account and those things. And so I start winning at life because this became something. This is my platform. This is a way that I could give back and help someone else. And I know there are a lot of guys that have been in this business and made a lot of money. But they look at the end and say, what has it really got me? Guys that have been divorced 4 or 5 times, or 2 or 3, and you're fighting the wrong thing. And so you got to sometimes take yourself out of it, and you got to look at it and say, hey, listen, God gave you an opportunity. You have a platform, whether you're yourself and you're in the media and you have a platform, or you have a platform and you're the CEO of a company. At the end of the day, who are you helping with your platform? And so that's why that's so important to me. I tell that to every young coach when guys, I get a lot of time, hey, coach, how do I get into business? How can I get to where you're at? And then I always ask them I ask them a question. What's your purpose in life? And they'll tell me my purpose is coaching. I said, no, it's not. I said, again, I don't take this the wrong way. I don't think there's one person that God put on. your purpose is to be a college coach, baseball coach, soccer coach. Your purpose might be to help other people, but it surely isn't just to coach. And so again, sometimes you got to, when you figure out that purpose, then you can figure out what's going on with your life.
My last question for you that we ask everybody: your path to you're the first guy. I've talked to probably 50 coaches so far for this. You're the first one that graduated to a Division I head coaching job, maybe then being officially named a Division I head coach. Purpose aside, if there is any advice you could give to a young guy that's getting into the business that one day wants to be a Division I head coach, what would that piece of advice be?
You got to love this business, man. This is a hard business. If you don't love it, I mean, absolutely love the grind of it, I would tell you don't do it, because eventually it's going to come out, whether you want it to or not. There are going to be good days. There are going to be bad days. I mean, it's funny. I had a conversation once with Mike Davis, and Mike was the head coach at Indiana. He had followed Bob Knight, and he was talking about all the struggles and all the things that he had to go through. And we're sitting there having dinner, and he's like, man, this is really tough. And so I just said to him, hey, Mike, as tough as you think this might be, coach at IUPUI. I'll take your job in, take my salary. Let's switch our salaries. So again, when you start complaining how bad things are for you, remember in this business, man, sometimes it's about that you got to love the grind. You got to, I have not worked a day in my life. I enjoy what I'm doing. And that's what and if you don't have that passion, then I would tell you, don't get in this business, because this business can eat you up.